Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com. We also have Fast Market contributor Jenny Horn with us as well. Today we're talking a fun one, Beyond Meat.
Beyond Meat, and I can't believe Tom White was just the market optimist. That was wild for you.
What? I'm always
I can't believe it. But okay, I'm a little bit optimistic on Beyond Meat because we couldn't be talking about this at a better time because Lent began yesterday. So for the next 40 days, I'm going to attempt to be vegan. So that will be extremely difficult. But I think that companies like Beyond Meat have made it much easier for people to be, of course, vegan vegetarian. So they have earnings post-market today. The shares are up something of 40% this year, and their sales are expected to have grown 157% year over year. So this company is growing, and it seems like it's one of those names we talk about in the headlines all the time. They have a partnership with McDonald's. They just this week launched this partnership with Starbucks in Canada. So it seems like they're really doing a good job of now spreading themselves outside of grocery stores into these huge fast food chains to make kind of Beyond Meat this mainstream thing. I mean, I don't know how true that is because we were joking before the break about how the Beyond Meat burgers aren't necessarily more healthy. They have so many different products and ingredients and chemicals in them, which I think is the reason they're getting a lot of flack. But if you're trying to be vegan like me, this is the greatest thing ever. So that kind of goes into our first tweet, which says, Beyond Meat and Starbucks all hype. They sell very little up front at the counter. Most sales are in the coffee. Beyond Meat hyped. Now Walmart has their own brand and it's not selling. I believe it will be discounted and discontinued. So that was kind of the same narrative that happened with the Impossible Burger. They came out at Burger King, then the Impossible Whopper has now been lowered in price because of demand. But I have to think, Andy, that this is a good thing for, of course, Beyond Meat having the Starbucks partnership. I mean, it feels like there's no such thing as bad publicity when it comes to Beyond Meat.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this company has mastered PR, and they do a very good job of building hype around their brand and their stock. And so that's always something to keep in mind as you go into an earnings call like this. When we look at Beyond Meat, and especially when we look at plant-based diet mentions, so LikeFolio can track these macro consumer trends and talk about, are people more likely to be on this plant-based diet like Jenny's talking about, that Jenny's going to try for 40 days apparently. And the resounding answer is yes. That is growing at an exponential rate. Unfortunately, what we see for Beyond Meat is a slowdown in their growth specifically, which tells us that while there are macro consumer tailwinds in the plant-based diet category, the level of competition has stepped up to extremely higher levels. Like that tweet mentioned, there are generic brands out there, Walmart, Kroger, they all have their brands. Impossible competitors are popping up everywhere and taking advantage of this trend. And it seems like, according to our data, while Beyond Meat is growing at a really fast clip, that growth rate is slowing. And I think that's cause for concern for investors going forward.
Yeah, I think that's the big key here, Andy, is the hype was always there for the first year that this thing comes out. And it's like, if you look at this might be one of those where a guy like Alex might try Beyond Meat once or twice, but he's not going to make it a part of his regular diet, and he's not going to buy it over and over again. Sure, I want to try it, but at the same time, I don't think this is going to come into the normal day-to-day intake of food, and I think that's probably why you're seeing a drop-off there. But the way that I want to look at it, is it all about the partnerships that they're creating with Starbucks, with McDonald's, or is the competition, like from Cargill's releasing their own, Tyson's coming up with fake chicken soon, that's going to be probably weighing on this company moving forward, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I think so. And I think, we talked about Beyond Meat being a master of managing the press. And so the other way to look at this, the little bit more bearish way to look at this, is that there's a reason that these companies isolate these test environments to somewhere like Canada. I mean, that seems to be the place that they always start these things, and it never really tends to materialize that much out of there. It's like, if you can't get Canadians to say something nice about your product, then maybe you don't have a very good product. I think that there is a problem that these companies face in terms of growing competition. It's coming from all directions. There's much cheaper options. And quite frankly, I think a lot of people just don't see the product as that tasty or that fulfilling.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I read this interesting statistic, Andy, that only 2% of Americans are vegetarian and 0.5% are vegan. So those are the people that would be your kind of target audience, and there's not very many of them. So I have to think, despite the fact that I will be purchasing a lot of Beyond Meat, I think in the next 40 days, that I'm a very, very small sample size of the people that will be returning to Beyond Meat, like Tom mentioned, like you just mentioned. Because, I mean, what's going to get someone like Alex, who just said, like, how will he keep buying it? What will make him keep getting it? But
well, let me jump in there then, Andy. Building on this, obviously there's a lot of people who talk about this, and I feel like anybody who is vegan or vegetarian, which there are some, obviously 2% is a big number in terms of how many people there are in the US and in the world, but they like to tell us about how, I mean, even Jenny's telling us that she's going to do it for the next month or so, so it feels to be kind of one of those situations where it's a vocal minority more so than the representative of the public. So what would get me to do it is make it cheaper. Right now it's at a premium. Why would I go out of my way to spend more money for something that I don't like as much?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what it boils down to. If you're not, purely committed to this lifestyle, I think, there is a lot of choice. That, a lot of people don't even want to taste something that tastes like meat if they're going vegan, and so they're out of the market on this. So it's tough. I think, these companies are at the beginning of a movement, and I think that movement is very real. But a lot of times it's the explorers that end up with arrows in their back, and others figure it out in a much better way. And I think that's probably the case for what happens with Beyond Meat long term.
Yeah, and Andy, I have to say, you're an avid keto person on Twitter. I've been avid about vegan. I don't know why I feel the need to tweet about it and share. I mean, it's just one of those things.
We don't know why either.
If you're doing this special diet, it's like something you want to share on social media. And I have to agree with Alex, even though I am completely guilty, that people do love to talk. These are some of the loudest voices, the people that are, of course, doing vegan, paleo, all these different things. So I'm guilty, and I think you're guilty too, because I've seen you tweet about keto. But that goes into our next tweet, which says, Beyond Fake Meat is locked and loaded. Added some calls yesterday, looking strong pre-market, and this was yesterday. So we'll book some tidy profit this morning and let the rest ride as a lotto play into earnings tomorrow, with what is now zero risk. Any upside move is said to be explosive. So zero risk, I can't say I agree with that in today's market, zero risk, but this is a company that, of course, in the beginning of this segment, we mentioned their growth. They've grown 40%, in the last year. They're kind of tapering off as of lately with the rest of the market, but how do you look at a trade for this stock, Tom? Because, they do have earnings post-market. It seems like earnings are kind of on the back burner right now.
But I think the key thing here is, the explosive part of this tweet that this person put out there. You got to remember, there's a big short interest in this stock.
Right.
There's only 61 million shares outstanding, or the float, as we call it. So there's not a lot out there. It's stabilized a little bit. I could see easily a big move in this stock either way based on that. But you have to look at the partnerships that they're going. The growth that you mentioned, over 150% year over year from the same quarter in 2018, what they're going to report on 2019 this year, is probably going to be pretty big just based on those. But you got to remember, you mentioned competition. Tim Hortons, who tried it in Canada, they wiped it off their menu. They said it was only a test market anyway, but they wiped it out already. But Starbucks starting in Canada, you figure if the Canadians like it, that maybe everybody can like it, because maybe they're not too fond of
right, like Andy said, they're always testing in these niche markets, which is so funny.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And Andy, tying this all together here, summing it all up, consumer purchase intent mentions are clearly, growing year over year significantly here. Happiness is hung in there pretty strong, and obviously the plant-based mentions count just for the trend in general is pretty strong as well. But when we're looking at this, the other piece I would say, even if they come in with all the numbers, is how a company like this can spin it on the conference call. You've already said that they're a master of kind of this PR as a company. Are you looking at this as a stock that's now 107, that was trading over 235 at one point last year, that there's maybe a possibility for them to be, the street to look at this as a pretty positive report, regardless of what they say, because they can spin it so positively?
Yeah, I think that, that's the risk. I think that from our perspective, the growth has slowed. It's still impressive growth, but it has slowed in terms of people talking about buying Beyond Meat products. And so I think there's definitely risk to the downside in the numbers. There's extreme risk to the upside in terms of short squeeze or, the company narrative that they put out. I think going into this, probably my favorite trade is buying the Jenny Horn 21-day vegan puts, because I don't think that there's any shot she's making it a full 40 days.
Wow, nice.
Doubters, I'm totally going to make it.
Solid, Andy.
We'll check in 21 days and see what we're looking at, Andy. But thanks for joining us as always, and we'll see what Beyond has to say when they report these earnings after the bell. But thanks to Jenny, thanks to Andy.